Hey, so I am Steve Weil. Chris and I worked together about 15 years ago at Microsoft. I'm going to try to tell the story about gay square dancing. There's a picture of me jumping. I'm probably doing parkour if I'm not at work or dancing. Uh, Picture with my wife, which may answer your first question. Do you have to be gay? No, you just need to be willing to be in the minority and maybe get hit on occasionally. Um, Going to spend about half of this time talking about dancing and then about sort of the gay culture piece of it. We do indeed start in a square and end in a square. As you'll see in the upper left, most of the time we're in all sorts of different patterns. We'll show some of that. I'm going to use this sort of schematic that you have in the lower right because it's easier to see what's going on. The squares represent people dancing the boy part. The color coding shows you the couples.
Yes.
And that's where the sequence will start.
Teach us square dance.
And then here's a quick video.
The couples circulate. Then the line into the middle and back.
Just sort of a typical workshop.
Start helping with some partners. Okay, past the ocean. Swipe and do. That's partner. Pull around the girl. Paris wheel. Zoom. That's partner go in the middle. In the middle, do around the do. Turn the girl. Pass through. Touch a quarter. Bowling across. And a quarter in. Go around the left grab. Grab the.
So what is that? What did you just see? So does it look like dancing? Unlike most kinds of dancing, your rhythm and how you move is not really the key point, but you got to end up in the right place facing the right direction. What might not be clear is that this is not a sequence that we've memorized. We're reacting to what the caller says. The caller may be prepared, maybe improvising. The callers are sort of like, the best callers are sort of like chess masters. They keep several moves ahead in their brain. They can watch people all over the floor. And it really is about the skill of the caller, their choreography, the creativity. Combine that with your individual skill, the teamwork of your square, and when that all clicks together so that it's difficult enough that you can mostly succeed, but hard enough that you got to really try hard. In its ideal, like you really hit that flow state, and you all just whether it's difficult, whether it's fast, whether it's relaxing, and they throw you off balance. So you should ignore the details of this because choreography is hard. But what I was trying to show is that you start in a square, you go through a series of calls, you get all stirred up, you dance with everyone in your square. And then if you and the caller have not made a mistake, they unscramble everything, undo all the entropy, and resolve back to home. And that's sort of a basic sequence. Gets all mixed up. The only thing you can count on is rotational symmetry. This is the list of calls in what's called the mainstream program. This is your typical intro series. Takes about 20 weeks. If you learn these, you can go anywhere in the world and dance at a dance that is called at the mainstream level. And then there are levels beyond that where it gets more and more interesting and conceptual. I'm going to spend a little time talking about sort of how it gets even more deeper than just memorizing a bunch of calls. So here are some of the patterns we'll be in across the top, or lines facing in, or waves where you're facing the opposite direction from your partner. We can get more interesting geometry diamonds where there's points that can be together or separate. On the bottom, an hourglass is a box surrounding a diamond, and the reverse is a galaxy. Calls can refer to any different subset of this, and there are different things you have to do depending on the formation you're in. But it's more than just shapes. At any time, there are a number of attributes that apply to you. You might be dancing the boy roll or the girl roll, be a center or an end, facing in or out. And the caller may say something like Bell's trade, and you have to figure out at that moment, is your partner on your right or your left? So you always have to be aware of your position in the square and which of these attributes apply to you. And then we get to fool with geometry. So there's on the upper left, a straightforward column. Circulate pattern is just moving to the next position. But we can fool with geometry. We can stretch it out in the middle and make it an O. We can pinch it in the middle and make a butterfly. And we can even do weirder things like the magic column in the center where there's basically a cross in the pattern at those two separate spots. So this is really like fooling with the coordinate system. Sometimes you have to transform out of that to do something difficult and then put the pieces back together. Here's a simple call called Pass the Ocean. It has a formal definition, which is pass through, face your partner, and step to a wave. You can learn to dance that sort of muscle memory. You don't initially have to worry about the definition. It's defined for 4 people. There's 8 in a square, so that box of 4, there might be 2 side by side or 2 top to bottom. But as you go through the higher programs, you will have to refer to that definition because it will matter. But we can take that simple call and we can start playing with it. So here's a concept called as couples. And in here, you and the person next to you are functioning as a single unit. If you're dancing, you grab that hand really hard. And so now all 8 of you are acting as though you are only 4 people. There's a variation on that below called in tandem, where you and the dancer behind you act as a single person. So we're composing these functions. And so it's no longer just muscle memory. We can mess with the geometry even more. Concentric, the center box of 4 acts as one, the outer box of 4 acts as another box. In the blocks, the 2 boxes are overlapping and you have to do your part without being confused or distracted by the other people coming in and out of it. Triple boxes has a real box of people in the middle, but on the outside, you're dancing with an imaginary person. So you have to both do the move without a person there and imagine who they are. In Phantom, they're even more sort of overlapping. So what about the gay part? Well, we don't, most of us learn to dance both the boy and the girl role. Dress is pretty casual. You can dress up if you want. You get a real great mix of people, like the lower right picture. Tends to be a little more focused on technical dancing. Very singles friendly. You don't just dance with your spouse or partner you came with, dance with people, with anybody there. Most of our practices are in small groups in church basements and whatnot, but successful clubs once a year often have what's called a fly-in, where folks from nearby towns will come and we'll hire more and higher quality callers. So it's a little more of a party. Get to know dancers in surrounding cities. Usually dance all weekend. So these are sort of big events. And then once a year, there's the annual gay convention, and this is more like 800 people. Most of the days are in breakout sessions, so you're working on something that's challenging for your level. But in the evenings, all get together, and it's really fun to have hundreds and hundreds of people in a room dancing together, mostly in sync. And it's of course challenging for the caller to be directing that many people. And they're very good. They can spot mistakes and correct people all across the floor. So just like take a moment and soak in the smiles. I mean, this is really like the fun part. Like when that flow happens, when you and your square are just barely hanging on for dear life, and the callers are really on and performing at their best. There's just not much like it. You're not thinking about anything else in the world, and just succeeding in that moment with 7 other people in your square, hanging on for dear life. Another part of the convention is the Honky Tonk Queen contest, drag show, lip sync contest, late at night. Not totally my cup of tea. I don't always want to do this after maybe dancing from 9 or in the morning till 6 at night, but it's definitely part of the culture and can be a lot of fun. And then also, next slide, most conventions have an event around town where we rent a bunch of tour buses and do kind of flash dances. We hosted the convention in Seattle a couple of years ago. We danced at the Space Needle, at the Museum of Flight, down at Gasworks Park, out in the sun. These aren't usually very technical. They're just good time dances out in the air, out in the community, and really a fun sort of counterpoint to dancing in hotel conference rooms. The logistical challenge to find places. So I wish I had a really happy ending. I'd say the future is uncertain. Some of that is for good reasons. When the heyday of gay square dancing, many dancers were not out at work. And so this was really like the place they could be themselves. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's a little less of a need than it used to be. But overall, demographics are aging. Venues are harder to come by. COVID has really knocked us for a loop. It blew through the Seattle Square Dance community early, and it's not clear when few people will feel safe dancing again.